Hey, thanks so much for tuning into the Daily Dose for Spiritual Growth. Today is Tuesday. We're going to be in Exodus chapter 27. And we're going to talk about what was placed on the outside of the tabernacle. Yesterday, we talked about how there's very specific details on how the tabernacle was to be built. And there's no difference on what the outside of the tabernacle was to look like. And the very thing that is outside of the tabernacle is an altar of burnt sacrifice, something that they are to offer to the Lord prior to going into the tabernacle. Here's some of the details of how it was to be built. Build an altar of acacia wood, 3 cubits high. It is to be square, so it needs to be 5 cubits long, 5 cubits wide. Make a horn at each of the 4 corners so that the horns of the altar are one piece. And overlay the altar with bronze. Make all its utensils of bronze, its pots to be removed from the ashes, its shovels, sprinkling bowls, meat forks, fire pans. Make a grating for it, a bronze network, and make a bronze ring at each of the 4 corners of the network. Put it under the ledge of the altar so that it is halfway up the altar. Make poles of acacia wood for the altar and overlay them with bronze. The poles are to be inserted into the rings so that it would be on 2 sides of the altar when it is carried. Make the altar hollow out of boards. It is to be made just as you were shown on the mountain. So again, very, very specific details of how this altar was to be made. And what is an altar? What does it symbolize? It symbolizes sacrifice. It symbolizes that at that altar, you were supposed to give God a sacrifice, and typically it was an animal. You sacrifice an animal, and then you were to go into the tabernacle. So today, we don't have to do that. Praise God, you don't have to give your animal, your pet, to the Lord. But what it symbolized, and what livestock symbolized, it symbolized wealth. It symbolized your belongings, because that's what people had. And so what God was saying to people is saying, offer to me your very best before you go into my presence. Today, what does that mean? Well, we don't have to do these physical sacrifices, but what I feel like we need to do is more eternal sacrifices. And what we need to do is we need to sacrifice to the Lord our pride. What we need to sacrifice to the Lord is our greed. What we need to sacrifice to the Lord is our anger. Anything that is going to hinder our relationship with God, let us sacrifice that to the Lord, and then we can go to the Lord and with an emptiness, so that way we can be filled with His presence, filled with His joy, filled with His strength, His comfort, His provision. So let's go to the Lord as a sacrifice and allow God to fill us with His presence today. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure you tune in tomorrow for the Daily Dose for Spiritual Growth.